So hey anime fans, the series name is What If Naruto Got Harem with Hazbin Hotel, so let's start the series. Naruto had been in heaven for so long that everything he did when walking around was second nature, almost ingrained into his very pure being. He was casually walking through the clean, pristine, and overly bright streets of heaven, lined with dozens upon dozens of high-rise buildings, gleaming buildings that always had the look of a setting sun reflecting from the clean glass. He smiled easily and waved to the other heavenly angels as he passed by, even bowing to a particularly beautiful woman as she passed by. Before she turned a corner, she giggled and had a slight flush on her cheeks. Things were pretty simple in heaven, everything was perfect, no crime to speak of, no trash in sight, beautiful air quality, and, of course, every citizen that he saw or passed by was very polite and friendly. Some were more formal and old school than others, with a stricter aura about them, but every citizen of heaven was a good, pure soul that had been rewarded in their past life. Suddenly, something caught Naruto's attention. It was barely a whisper, hardly even audible to many, but for Naruto, his senses had always been greater than the regular angel of heaven, thanks to his past life. Humming softly, Naruto stopped what he was doing, before he turned upon the balls of his feet, kicking up a cute little cloud ball behind him. As he got closer to the other side of the pristine clear walkway, his eyes suddenly narrowed as he caught sight of an angel that he really didn't enjoy. That angel in question looked humanoid in appearance, unlike some others who seemed more fantastical, and his face did look similar to the other exorcists that he had rarely seen around throughout the years in heaven. However, unlike the exorcists, he had rather normal-looking eyes and golden-colored facial expressions, which were more likely than not always formed in a grin. His head also held a pair of horns similar to an exorcist, albeit much longer and smoother, with a bright golden ornamental attachment on the tip of said horns. The angel's clothing consisted of a smooth white and golden cloak with what appeared to be a large symbol emblazoned on the front, but the most striking feature of this angel was the pair of extremely large golden-colored wings that were attached to his back. This was in stark contrast to Naruto's brilliant white, gleaming wings. He also had a bright, golden halo above his head. In contrast to Naruto's whitish cream, this was Adam, yes, that Adam, the first man. Now, Naruto may have been an old soul, so old in fact that he wasn't even sure how old he was anymore, but he was nowhere near the age of Adam, who was one of the oldest souls in heaven. The mere sight of Adam always caused shivers to run up and down Naruto's spine, and it wasn't the good shivers either, it was the shivers of pure revulsion. Shaking his head from those thoughts, Naruto hummed in thought when he noticed an exorcist standing beside Adam, the creepy mask still affixed on the woman's head. I reckon there will be a way to reduce the time even more. Adam suddenly asked, piquing Naruto's interest once more. The exorcist said, "No, sir, come on Danger Tits, surely I can get an extermination dash." "Shush! Do not mention that word here," the proclaimed Danger Tits barked, her wild eye glancing around. All Adam did was wave his large, black hands, almost waving off the concern shown by the female exorcist, before his grin lit up again, before he chuckled darkly, his hands rubbing together as he disappeared from view, with the exorcist following dutifully behind him moments later. Extermination. Naruto thought to himself, his head tilting rather cutely, causing some golden blonde bangs to fall in front of his bright blue eyes. What does he mean? His eyes widened, a heavy feeling started to make itself known in his gut. Oh God, please don't mean what I think that means. He always knew that exorcists disappeared for a few days of the year, every year on the same day. The most recent knowledge of that happening just a few days ago, maybe a week or so. Oh fuck. Shaking his head, Naruto extended out his wings, and with a powerful flap, all 6 of his wings, 3 on either side, quickly propelled him up into the air with ease. Getting to the bottom of this was the only thing on his mind right now. He had never been more worried about anything in his angelic afterlife. Underscore 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 underscore. Quickly striding into a building, Naruto barely took any heed to the small handful of other angels that had their bottoms sat firmly in comfortable-looking seats, each of them reading magazines that had a whole slew of unbiased and simple advertisements for various things and knickknacks. He did, however, feel someone looking at him. Glancing off to the side, he noticed that an angel was looking at him through the clear, yet thick layered glass leading into a small meeting room. However, Emily, one of the group's younger seraphim, was not just any ordinary angel. Emily resembles that of a young girl with gray skin, long periwinkle hair with white tips, light blue eyes that always shone in happiness, with dark blue irises, along with white freckles on her cheeks and the bridge of her nose, and gently fluttering behind her were 6 feathered wings on her back. Her outfit of choice today seemed to be a mostly white dress with short, puffy blue sleeves with darker cuffs, a blue sash wrapped around her waist, a blue star pattern on her chest, and a blue triangular pattern on the hem with smaller diamond shapes between the mounds. He could also spot the blue ballerina shoes on her feet, and as always she had a white halo hovering above her head that was decorated with small, tiara-like spikes. Seeing the excitable features belonging to one of the younger seraphim, Emily, he couldn't help but wave in her direction, and from his simple gesture, the smile upon her young face exploded magnificently, and he could even see her do a little jitter of excitement as he regarded her. Sometimes, she was too adorable for her own good. "Hi, can I help you on this blessed day?" "Good morning, Rachel," Naruto said politely to the angelic bird-like humanoid. "I'm, here to speak to one of the archangels." He turned his attention away from the ever-excited seraph in the other room and toward the receptionist who always worked so diligently in this building when he heard a gentle, soothing voice speaking to him. Rachel blinked, before she tilted her head ever so slightly and looked at Naruto in a hint of surprise. "Oh, allow me to check Naruto." Normally, one would have to wait for their turn. However, Naruto was one of the older souls and, by far, one of the purest souls in heaven. As a result, he did place a little bit more importance on the things that were important to him. Might be a little backwards, but she didn't create the rule. Tapping away at her very technologically advanced keyboard, she started to softly hum to herself as her eyes quickly scanned upon her multiple screens, keeping an eye out if any of the archangels were free from their meetings. After a few moments of searching, she looked towards Naruto, a tiny frown on her face. "I'm sorry, sir," she spoke earnestly, "but it looks like all the archangels are busy today." "Oh," Naruto murmured despondently. "Well, thank you for checking, Rachel," he added. He was prepared to put the entire extermination comments to the back of his mind and wait for tomorrow to try again. Suddenly, a little ding rang out from her screen, and she quickly scanned it. "Oh, but it seems like Sarah is free for a little bit. Would you like to see her instead?" "Yes, please." Nodding his head to go along with the comment, Naruto turned back around and placed his hands on the countertop. Nodding her head with a small smile, Rachel clicked on Sarah's name and quickly booked Naruto in to see her. "Her room is located on the left side, 3 doors down," Rachel said with a small smile and a slight droop of her head. "You are free to see her now." "Thank you," Naruto said, returning the gesture and dipping his head ever so slightly. With his meeting booked in, Naruto quickly strode down the hallway, his heart thumping in his chest. Knocking 3 times, Naruto heard the muffled, yet elegant voice of Sarah from behind the beautifully crafted and painted door. "Come in, Naruto." He reached for the doorknob in the shape of a halo and gently twisted it to the side, revealing a tiny intricate eye-like pattern in the middle of the glass-like material. Hearing the small click, Naruto took a small breath in through his nose and softly exhaled through his mouth, knowing he could enter. He gently pushed the door open and was greeted by a very fancy but very clean meeting room that looked like a typical living room in every apartment building in Heaven's Promenade district. And, like he expected, he could see Sarah waiting patiently on the other end of the room. Sarah is a tall, humanoid seraphim angel with dark skin, white markings on her face, a detailed glowing white halo shaped like a crown to show her rank as high seraphim, and 3 pairs of white wings. She wears a long, white, gray, and bouffant-sleeved gown, has long, curled hair in a gray ombre color, and she had a long, slender, thin body with long fingers and, "Good morning, Sarah," he said, smiling and politely dipping his head as he put his hand on his heart and closed the door behind him with his free hand for maximum privacy. She replied, "How can I help you on this blessed day?" with a small smile on her beautiful face. "Good morning to you too, Naruto." She inquired, getting right to the point of the meeting's purpose. He began awkwardly, rinsing his neck. Well. I saw Adam, just a few minutes ago with an exorcist." He glanced back at Sarah briefly before he suddenly gasped as her normally bright and cheery eyes suddenly turned stormy and began to show a frown. She said, aware of Adam's dislike for Naruto and Adam's dislike for Naruto, which frequently resulted in nasty insults delivered behind his back. "I see. Did anything happen?" she asked. She inquired, "No, well, maybe." He said, I heard him speaking about something," clearing his throat suddenly, "something about exterminations." Suddenly, Sarah took a deep, heavy breath through her nose, her hands raised to her head, and suddenly started to rub against her forehead and the side of her face, like she was calming herself down. "Is that something that takes place? Is that why so many angels disappear every year on the same day, and why some come back injured a day or 2 later?" asked Naruto, his heart still pounding so quickly that he was surprised that it hadn't already burst out of his chest. "Because they go down to hell and slaughter sinners," he continued. Sarah explained, her voice strained, "I assure you, Naruto, that perhaps you overheard he always had an inkling as to when people were skipping the truth on him, perhaps it was something that he had in his past life, and right now, it was starting to exude from Sarah in abundant waves." "No, I know what I heard, Sarah," Naruto said firmly, cutting her off. "No, I know what I heard, Sarah." "Well." Sarah began, quickly closing her mouth. We. Adam, closing her eyes, exhaling deeply before burying her head in her hands and exhaling again, Naruto said, clearly hurt, "It's true." And said, "I can't believe it." "Naruto, please," Sarah quickly interrupted, her tone pleading, "it's what was required. No. Extermination is not the answer, you could always just leave them alone, or better yet, simply have a diplomatic meeting between heaven's leaders, i.e., the archangels, and with hell's leaders," he exclaimed, a small amount of his angelic power leaking out as he rattled the mugs on the table. Sarah's form suddenly shifted, and within a flash, her angelic form became visible, with a third eye suddenly appearing in the middle of her forehead, and more eyes forming upon her wings and even on the very dress that she was wearing. "You don't understand." She exclaimed a slight echo within her words, before taking a deep breath and controlling herself, slipping out of her angelic form. Naruto, they were uprising against us. How are you aware of that? With his eyes narrowed, he inquired, was there evidence that that occurred? Sarah went to open her mouth but was once again cut off by Naruto. He said, glancing away, especially from the texts that are proudly displayed in the library, about how you and the others cast him and Lilith out of heaven, and crushing his dreams in the process. Don't even say Lucifer's name, because you and I both know that isn't true, he said. Well, Adam mentioned, so that's where the problem began, Naruto murmured in distaste, you have been trusting Adam with everything he says. You will treat Adam with the respect he deserves. Naruto simply scoffed, crossing his arms over his chest, I'd much rather trust Lucifer himself before trusting Adam for even a minute. Naruto, don't say that, Sarah warned him, sternly, her eyes narrowed ever so slightly. Why? It's the truth. I can't believe he is still in heaven, he chuckled, surely you aren't blind to what his behavior is, and it's only been getting worse. Not at all. Enough is enough. Sarah exclaimed, her anger overflowing causing her to shift back into her pure form and flaring her power, causing the entire room to shake every so slightly, and the windows to crack and chip. You will be leaving, now, and I don't want to see you again until you decide to apologize for your actions. I'll take my leave then, Naruto said, turning around. He reached for the door handle before looking over his shoulder. Tell Emily that I'm sorry, he murmured. After a brief pause, Sarah took another deep breath and returned to her humanoid form. What do you mean? She inquired with concern. After making that declaration, Naruto exited the room and shut the door behind him. It took a few moments to realize what was just said to her, and Sarah's eyes widened considerably. Wait, Naruto. Rushing towards the door, she all but ripped it open and glanced left and right, trying to spot Naruto in the hallway. However, she couldn't see him. He had already vanished. If he had actually fallen, he would probably be gone forever now. If not now, he probably would soon. After all, he did just reject heaven, and heaven did have the power itself to reject or accept souls. Shit. It all happened so quickly for Naruto. As soon as he placed the idea and thought of no longer being associated with heaven, he felt an overwhelming sense of power wash over him. It was a terrible burning sensation, but rather than being burned on the outside, it felt more like he was being burned on the inside, almost as if something was trying to destroy his soul. Then, within a blink of an eye, it was gone. He could no longer feel the connection between himself and heaven like he was so used to. If he was being completely honest, it gave him the impression that a portion of himself was now missing, and it made him feel a little bit empty inside. Suddenly, Naruto's nostrils flared outwards, and he took a deep breath through his nose. A sudden gag erupted from his throat as the heavy, lingering scent of blood, and God knows what else entered his senses. He could feel the hairs of his neck standing on end, and he could feel his body twitching minutely. Naruto blinked as his deep, cerulean blue eyes opened, taking a moment to process what was going on and what was around him. He was no longer in the neatness of a heavenly building, or in the hallway just outside of Sarah's small meeting room. He was no longer in heaven, that much was very clear. He was in hell, plain and simple. If the darkened, bloody red sky, along with the multiple pentagrams up in the sky, along with the sinister smell of fire and brimstone that lingered around. Naruto muttered to himself, so this is hell, as he spun on his feet and took in as much of his surroundings as he could in such a short amount of time with his eyes. There were a few interesting winter souls in heaven, but nothing as truly repulsive as some that he saw down here, and all he could see were run-down buildings, some of which were still open and had customers entering and exiting, looking somewhat satisfied and happy. The faces of these sinner demons were monstrous. He frowned as he noticed what appeared to be a run-down apartment complex with the entire structure slanting to the left in a dangerous manner, as if it were about to collapse at any moment, potentially killing anyone who lived there. He could see graffiti all over, most of it crudely drawn with images of phalluses and other extremities proudly displayed. He could also see a number of swear words bolded in black or gray, and he could even see a number of posters taped to half-broken power lines, most of which slandered heaven to hell and back. No pun intended, he thought to himself, a small lopsided smile on his whiskered visage as he held back a snort. Humming softly to himself, he placed his hands behind his back and clasped his wrists together, a small habit that had formed over the countless years of heaven that it almost felt natural at this point to him. Eyes widening, Naruto cleared his throat as he noticed a demon approaching his general area. Although she didn't look too impressed. "Excuse me," he called out politely towards the demon. The aforementioned demon took a moment to look at him before turning her head and pausing. "What the fuck do you want?" "I'm in the middle of an errand for a dipshit associate," she questioned harshly. Her eyes then trailed up and down his form. Naruto could only gulp as her piercing eyes took in every detail of him. "Terrible fit, by the way," she said offhandedly. "Sorry." "Oh, Naruto murmured in confusion, a little taken aback by the attitude and language. Before looking down at his outfit, he didn't think it was anything too bad, just a simple white shirt with gold and black patterns across the fabric, and white dress pants that were a bit too short for his person, showing off his simple black socks underneath. Shaking his head, Naruto looked at the demon in front of him once more and noticed that, despite what heaven's propaganda tried to hide, she was quite pretty for a demon. White skull-shaped earrings, a sleeveless navy blue coat with burgundy lining and 2 desire hearts on the left side of the fur collar, a set of loose pants that were also navy blue and desire red in a striped pattern, held by a black buckle with a white heart-shaped buckle, and for footwear, she had heeled black shoes with white palms on the top. All in all, she had a fascinating appearance, and for his true look at a demon of hell, must say, not too bad. Shaking his head, he noticed that she was no longer paying attention to him. Instead, she was staring at her phone like it was the most important thing in the world, and seemingly scrolling through something. "I was wondering if you could tell me where I am currently," he asked, hoping for a bit more information. She said, "Well, duh, in hell," with a slight smirk on her face. "I understand," Naruto exclaimed, waving his hands about frantically. "Could you please tell me where in hell am I?" "Where else but the Pride Ring," the girl said with no shortage of sass in her voice, as she regarded him over the phone with a raised brow. "All sinner demons reside in the Pride Ring." "Oh," Naruto mumbled. "Well, thank you," he replied, tilting his head slightly in her direction. "Aren't you a polite one?" the girl muttered with a small titter, her eyes glinting rather dangerously. "I'm afraid that won't last long here, dude." Naruto raised a brow at her. She said, "Let me give you a bit of advice, whether you take it to heart or not, I don't give a shit," before briefly putting her phone away. "Either keep your head down and don't bring attention to yourself, otherwise you will be gobbled up by everyone and everything here," she said, looking at him. What?" he squeaked, before shaking his head wildly. "And no, I'm not." He froze as he saw her smiling at him right now, almost as if he were a cut of meat to be enjoyed as a fine delicacy. And he swore he could see her eyes dimming to be nothing but deep pits of pure charcoal. Using a few moments to take in that advice, and forget about that insinuation, a soft smile graced his whiskered visage before nodding his head. "Right, thank you, though," he said softly, missing the surprised look on the female demon's face. "I'll keep it in mind." "You certainly are an interesting one," the girl muttered again, shaking her head, causing her hair to flay about to and fro. "Maybe our paths will cross again," Naruto said with sincerity. "Similarly, I hope to see you again as well." The female simply rolled her eyes before scoffing. She took her phone out of her pocket once more and began scrolling through what seemed to be a social media outlet. He wasn't all that familiar with social media, having never really needed or used it before. He murmured to himself, "Now, to find a library," hoping that the Pride Ring, or some other library, would exist in hell. It would be critical for him to gather as much information as possible, and he just hoped that he would meet others who were like that fascinating demon. Although he doubted it, he had to remember that this was hell, and people were bound to be very, very different compared to that demon he just spoke to, but still, his first true interaction in hell had to be a win. Score 1 to Naruto, score 0 to hell, he thought to himself with a small smile. Unseen to him, the female demon paused in her step again, and looked over her shoulder, before her head tilted to the side ever so slightly as she watched him walk away with grace and poise that was nearly unmatched by anything she had seen. She murmured to herself, shaking her head, "There is no way that someone like him belongs in hell. He is too nice, and doesn't have that bloodthirsty aura like other sinners," she said. Raising her phone, she switched to her camera before snapping a few pictures of Naruto's form, before quickly flicking it through to the little group chat that consisted of her other associates. "Keep an eye on this one right here, he is too weird," was the simple message to go along with the photo. Shaking her head once more, she pocketed her phone into her pocket, before groaning in annoyance as she heard the whoops and hollering of joy as she spotted two low-class sinner demons sniffing a line of drugs off of a bin lid. "For fuck's sake, why did Valentino make me do this? Why can't that sleazebag do it himself?" After walking for what seemed to be forever, Naruto was taking note of how the buildings were changing as he got closer and closer towards the center of this ring. At least, he believed it to be the center of the ring. So, it seemed like he was dropped off in what could be the downtown or ghetto from the words that he had heard from other angels back in heaven. Either way, he was glad that there were at least more people and buildings around now. But, with so many other demons around, Naruto couldn't help but be on edge slightly, especially by the way that some of them were looking at him. And they did not look friendly at all. Some even looked like they were just twitching to either kill him or do something else to him. Additionally, he found an incredible number of drug vending machines lining the corners of the cracked and broken pavements, selling a wide range of products. Naruto let out a sigh of annoyance as he glanced briefly at the shop he was passing by. Immediately, a bright blush covered his cheeks as he stared straight at a mannequin through a dirty piece of glass that appeared to be stained with something he didn't want to think about. But that mannequin was based on a female, human-like too, and was wearing the skimpiest pieces of clothing that Naruto had ever seen before. At this point, the bra she was wearing couldn't even be considered fabric. All it was were two triangles on either side of the chest connected by a thin string. It didn't even try to cover the mannequin's nipples. And the undergarments, my goodness, they looked like a thin, spaghetti string, and Naruto could quite easily see the outline of the mannequin's lower lips. Regarding the question, why the fuck does a mannequin require detailed genitals? After having already responded to his mental question, Naruto thought to himself, "Oh, right. Hell," before noticing a hellhound demon staring at him and asking, "What are you looking at?" Naruto asked, narrowing his eyes at a passerby demon who was looking at him with a bemused expression on his face. He wouldn't lie, seeing just how buff that Lupin hellhound demon was, intimidated him. Just a tad bit, and maybe caused a small puff of jealousy to filter into his system. How odd, Perhaps now that he was fallen, he could be more easily swayed by those kinds of emotions. "You aren't used to this thing, are you?" he asked, his voice rather gruff. "Must be a newbie here in hell." "As a matter of fact, I am," Naruto huffed, his cheeks still a little red. "However, while you are here and talking to me, could you point me in the direction of a library?" The demon before him suddenly barked out in laughter, his gray fur hackling slightly and his large maw opened, revealing dozens of sharp, gleaming teeth that were coated with saliva, causing him to gulp slightly. "Man, you certainly are a newbie," wiping a small tear that had formed underneath his scarred eye. "My man, there is no library here in hell, at least from my knowledge of the place." "Oh," Naruto mumbled. "Well, a directory, maybe." Well, if his wings had been exposed, which he was never going to do, especially here, they would have been drooping like the ears of a dog. "Someone who could help me." The Hellhound demon had a hand under his chin, and Naruto could see that his unscarred eye was glazed over in thought. "Well, I can't exactly help you there," he said with a small shrug of his shoulders. There was a brief pause between them. Oh, his poor golden blonde hair. He really was going to get gray hair by the time this was over. The Hellhound simply chuckled at his plight, the grin on his face not wavering slightly. "I'm sure in time you will find what you are looking for." Shrugging his shoulders, the Hellhound demon began walking away, whistling a tune that only he knew the true meaning of. Glancing up to the sky, Naruto sighed once more. Why couldn't things go his way? Why couldn't heaven at least give him one last little push in the right direction? Never mind the fact that heaven didn't care about him anymore after falling, that was beside the point. "Hey, fuck you. Fuck you." This demon almost sounded insulted, slightly irrational, and, if I wanted to fuck you, I would have done so already. Ears pricking up, Naruto spun around on the balls of his feet and watched with rapt attention as two sinner demons emerged from what seemed like a bar, one of which seemed to be roughly 8 feet tall and looked like an avian, came storming out after a much smaller sinner demon, barely standing 5 feet, who looked like an odd mix of an imp and a gremlin. However, the sinister grin on the 8-foot-tall avian-like demon caused Naruto to frown, especially feeling all of the malice and rage radiating off of his being. And with the way both were stumbling over their words and from their inability to stand up straight without swaying, Naruto could hazard a guess and say that they were most likely drunk. Seeing as how nobody seemed to care about the confrontation that was about to happen, Naruto cleared his throat. Excuse me, gentlemen," he said, garnering attention. And the responses that he got from the two demons were what he expected, but at the same time, not what he expected. "The fuck you want, pretty boy?" "Gentlemen. I'm a fucking woman." The diminutive 5-foot-nothing hybrid of a gremlin and an imp spoke up. Naruto muttered, averting his eyes as he noticed the bulge in the demon's tight, ripped leather pants. He blinked, tilted his head, and looked at the small demon. He certainly wasn't a girl, so, why? Oh, he was so confused. Biting his lower lip, Naruto glanced towards the two hammer demons. "I'm wondering if you could help me." The tall 8-foot avian demon regarded him for a moment, his hazy eyes glancing him up and down. "Only for a price," he slurred, waggling his eyebrows and licking his beak as his gaze lowered towards the crotch of Naruto's pants. Naruto shivered in revulsion and his hands shot down towards his crotch to keep his goods covered, and he had to fight a gag that threatened to make itself known at that horrible insinuation. "No, fuck off, assuming piece of shit," the short demon declared, evidently still enraged at being referred to as a gentleman. "Oh, okay," Naruto drawled out, "that's a no then," he murmured to himself more than anything. Turning on his heels, Naruto started to stride off further down the road, his hands in his pockets, and his posture slightly slumped. Maybe he just needed to find a place to stay for the night. Was it even the evening now? And try again tomorrow, maybe then he'll be able to get some answers that didn't have to have a price attached to them. He thought to himself, Naruto 1, Hell 2, not a great first day for Mr. Fallen Angel here. He just hoped and prayed that there would be at least a nice hotel for the night that was worthy of at least 3.5 stars, not a scam of a motel that was just a facade for an orgy palace. He didn't want to deal with that, especially after this roller coaster of a day. He also pondered Emily's well-being. He already deeply missed her. Emily sang to herself softly, "Welcome to heaven, oh oh, where the virtuous reside," and then humming the rather catchy tune that she overheard St. Peter sing, welcoming yet another beautiful soul into heaven and the perfect afterlife. Sure, it always made her a tad bit sad to know of a soul perishing down on earth, but it always made her feel so much happier and giddy knowing when they got accepted into heaven, all of their lingering pain and sadness would fade away into nothingness, especially if they were able to be reunited with their loved ones again. She squealed rather cutely, her hands clasping together as she could barely contain her little jitter as her wings flapped behind her ever so slightly. She may be a seraphim who was older than most other souls in heaven, apart from Adam, Sarah and the archangels, plus a few others, but she was always the more giddy of the bunch, always unable to keep her excitement at bay. Maybe that was why she was deemed to look after the morale and caring for the souls that needed it the most. If only Naruto accepted the position with me, she thought to herself, a faint smile on her face, only being able to imagine what she and Naruto could have done together during one of those meetings. It would have been so good. She had heard stories about Naruto's ability to get people to talk to him. It didn't matter if they had known each other for years or just met by chance. Naruto was the kind of person who took other people's feelings more seriously than his own, wanted to know who they really were, and could easily cut through a mask and bravado that they had tried so hard to keep intact. And afterwards, there was always a noticeable improvement with those angels, and from what she had heard of in the past, even poor human souls, whether they were coming close to death's door, or about to make one of the biggest mistakes of their lives. Perhaps that was why she had heard that Naruto had once been offered the position of seraphim. He politely declined, reasoning that he didn't want to be forced into it. He'd rather have it come up naturally than forcefully, otherwise, it wouldn't be the same. "Ah, he is such a good person," Emily murmured to herself, still rather ecstatic and bouncing on the balls of her feet, her 6 beautiful, albeit small, wings gently flapping behind her, lifting her slightly off the ground. She slowly approached the front garden of Naruto's apartment, which looked like every other apartment in heaven but was still completely perfect in their eyes because it had everything that an angel needed daily, shaking her head away from those thoughts and getting her mind back on track to what she was doing before being distracted. He was offered a much better, grandiose place that Adam and the other archangels, and a few, special winner souls, had, but once again, he had declined, claiming that he preferred straightforward apartments, since it would appear that was his choice of residence when he was alive so very long ago. Emily, hurry up and stop being distracted. Smiling brightly as she passed by a few special, colorful plants that were specially made to be able to grow in heaven's atmosphere, she couldn't help but close her eyes for a moment and take a deep breath in through her nose. She playfully chastised herself by gently slapping herself on the cheek. Ah, the smell was just great, very soothing on her nerves, which were maybe just a tad bit concerned and stressed. Humming softly to herself, Emily's eyes opened up once more before she all but bounced towards the glowing, perfectly kept door of Naruto's apartment. Now, since it was heaven and there were no burglaries and everyone had the same belongings in their homes, with the exception of a few personal changes, Naruto had always had everyone know that his door was open for those who needed him. Emily, on the other hand, was still polite and wanted to let those she was visiting know. Raising a rather dainty fist towards the door, she lightly rapped upon the firm wooden surface 3 times, signifying the holy number. Knock, knock, knock. Placing her hands behind her back and locking her wrists together, the smile was still firmly placed upon Emily's face as she gently bounced on the balls of her feet. Ah, she muttered to herself, hoping to hear Naruto's voice welcoming her to enter his humble abode, but that big, bubbly smile faded a little as she knocked on the door. Tilting her head to the side in confusion, Emily felt her heart rate spike up a little. However, this little spike wasn't an excitement or even exuberance. No, this felt foreign to her. It was almost a crushing feeling in her chest. She didn't like it at all, and maybe she just had her first experience with fear in her life. Shaking her head away from those thoughts, she closed her eyes, before a soft, golden glow formed around her entire being, and with a small little push, just a mere smidge of her power pulsed free from her, surrounding the entire apartment, and she couldn't feel anything in the area. Her mind was filled with images almost immediately as she did this, images of Naruto casually walking along the very hallways of his humble apartment. She watched with rapt attention as she saw the past Naruto taking a small bit of toast, and dipping it into a small heated pot of ramen broth before eating it up, rather messily, might she add, before suddenly, his eyes lit up with something and his 6 beautiful wings flapped behind him as he floated out of the apartment building, shutting the door behind him. Then, it was almost like everything was fast-forwarding. Emily could see the vague shadows of heaven's skies slowly changing and morphing across the ground, yet, she didn't care about that. All she did was keep her eyes glued onto the entrance of Naruto's apartment, simply wondering if he ever came back home. She didn't care if you called it creepy or stalker-like. She cared a lot about Naruto. If something happened to him, unseen to her, her eyes turned from bright blue to a terrifying crimson, and the bright halo above her head flickered from white to black, then back to white once more. However, just as quickly as those changes happened, they shifted back once again. When she noticed that the front door was a little shaky on its hinges for a few more moments, she gave a small, concerned frown. The door then opened immediately. However, instead of hope and happiness swelling within her bosom, it only caused another twinge of fear, she presumed. As a result of the fact that rather than Naruto gliding through the door, it showed her slowly entering the humble residence, he did not return. With a slight crease in her eyebrows, she murmured to herself, but she saw him earlier on, and she swore that she saw him leaving Sarah's little office, a little downtrodden, but that was nothing for Naruto. A small thought suddenly surfaced in her mind as she hummed softly. Perhaps Naruto had gone to heaven to see his other friends. Now, Naruto was a rather conservative individual when it concerned making proper friends, so he had plenty of acquaintances to speak of. However, one name in particular stood out most to her, more so than his student Saint Peter, and that little friend was Kini, a rather cute, and rather shy anthropomorphic sheep angel that worked in the CHERUB organization to come to a poor soul in a great time of need. Quickly taking out her little phone from her dress, she quickly turned it on before tapping on her contacts app, and quickly scrolling through all of the numbers that she had saved on her phone. And oh my goodness, she had a lot, probably in the hundreds at this point. Yes, she needed to clear out some contacts, primarily those she no longer bothered contacting for various reasons. After what seemed like an eternity of scrolling, Emily's eyes brightened when they fell upon the name, Kini, directly underneath the name of Keely. Quickly tapping on Kini's name, she tapped on the small phone symbol, before placing her phone up to her ears, humming softly as she did so. Ring, ring. After only having to wait a few little dials of the ringtone, Keeney picked up the phone. "Hiya, Emily." Was the ever-cheerful voice of Keeney on the other end of the line, and from the sounds of it, she was relaxing at home as she could hear a rather cheesy show in the background. "Good afternoon, Keeney." Emily responded by softly giggling at Keeney's frantic sounds as she fumbled with the remote in her living room. "What can I do for you, ma'am?" Keeney politely inquired as to why a seraph, not a mere cherub angel, would be contacting her. "Well, I was hoping to know if Naruto was with you," she questioned, hope clear in her voice. "No," she questioned, "isn't he in his apartment?" Hearing that, it didn't give Emily any hope whatsoever. She was so despondent by that news that even her wings drooped down to the floor. "And no," she murmured, "I would have thought he was with you. Oh, I would have loved to have his presence here, but sadly, he isn't here. I only just got home from a shift." "Oh." Emily murmured, "Well, I'll let you get back to it," she chuckled, doing her best to hide the embarrassment and slight fear in her voice. Quickly bringing the phone away from her ear, Emily quickly hung up on Keeney, cutting off whatever she was going to say as the line went dead. Huffing slightly, she placed the phone back in her dress pocket. However, in all of her haste, she forgot an important thing. Naruto had a phone as well. "Oh, stupid me," she muttered, slapping her hand to her forehead, creating a loud, and somewhat meaty, slap to echo in the living room. Blushing in embarrassment, she opened up her phone once more, and repeated the process beforehand, only this time scrolling down to the letter N. However, during her quick scroll, her eyes briefly bent a beam of Lute's name, and aloof seeing that name acquired tears to boring anatomy in the corners of her eyes, and a rather admirable sniffle became known. She and Lute, well, they acclimated to be friends, but, well, any time aback Lute met Adam, she changed, and not necessarily for the bigger either. She went from such a pleasant, candied angel who might have had a balmy inferiority circuitous article that she approved so adamantine to fix, to addition who angry absolute abrupt and awless to those that she didn't like, which, somehow included most, if not all seraphim and archangels. And Naruto. Especially Naruto, she aloof seemed to adulation cheeky him whenever they above paths, but conceivably that was aloof Adam's accurate thoughts and animosity actuality built in oral her, somewhat ambiguous mind. What had Adam done to Lute to account her to become like this? Or was it artlessly the emphasis of acceptable and exorcist, whatever that meant and entailed? Like, she knew that the exorcists, and Adam, labored the heavenly branch already or alert a year for a day or so, but added than that, she didn't apperceive what they did. Either way, this new Lute wasn't the aforementioned Lute that she knew. Maybe she could ask Sarah. Or in the affliction case scenario, try to ask Adam or Lute themselves. Shaking her arch from those thoughts, Emily connected scrolling through her contacts, her eyes locking assimilate anniversary name like she was a agog woman in chase of water. Then, finally, her feel landed appropriate on Naruto's name, and she bound apprenticed bottom ward on it, and apprenticed the alarm button. Her wings aerial rather accidental abaft her as she brought her buzz to her ear already again. Ring, ring, ring. Just as she anticipation that he wouldn't aces up, and be put through to voicemail, the campanology aback cut off, for a moment anesthetized and her affection fluttered in her chest as she heard Naruto's voice, although his articulation was a tad bit inclement with the connection. "Oh, Emily." Naruto greeted, a rather anxious cackle oral his band of speech. "Surprised you called." "Come on, Naruto," Emily sang out, "of course, I'll alarm you, you are one of my favorite bodies afterwards all." "One of?" Naruto questioned, and a like acceptance she couldn't see him, she could all but feel the affliction smile on his barbate visage. I'm rather flattered. Rolling her eyes, at that little animadversion, and aggravating to ascendancy the ablaze alike on her features, she aback austere her throat, afore allurement the catechism that had been. There was a abundant pause, afore Naruto coughed awkwardly, afore assuredly replying, out. Naruto artlessly said, and Emily swore she heard a baby little bark advancing from Naruto as he aback grunted. Oh, let me apperceive area you are, I can booty some time out of my day to appointment you. Emily said excitedly, a credible cheep in her voice. No. Naruto bound attempt bottom-ward her offer, accidentally adopting his voice, oral about panicked, he austere his throat, afore adding, no, amused don't. But why? Emily murmured, thoroughly confused. Normally Naruto would be animated to allure her over, no amount area he was. There was a large, abundant abeyance amid the two of them, then, absolutely suddenly, Emily could apprehend explosions and gunshots campanology out on Naruto's ancillary of the line, forth with an accomplished bulk of profanity that fabricated her feel, rather uncomfortable. Listen, Naruto batten out softly, whatever I may say next, please, don't abhorrence me for it. A little anxious with how, aflutter and accessible he sounded, Emily pushed on, Naruto, you apperceive I'll never, any time anticipate abnormally about you. She could apprehend Naruto's sigh, and she swore that she could apprehend the atomic little sniffle advancing from him. I fell. Oh, like, you fell over. So you're at the clinic? No, wait, that didn't accomplish sense. Why would there be credible gunshots and explosions in the clinic? Alike in the animal world, she anticipation that it was awful unlikely. No. I mean. I fell, Naruto batten out softly, like, fallen, I'm in hell, shatter. The complete of emblematic bottle burst oral her mind, feeling her affection aback ballyhoo into a actor pieces, Emily could alone accessible and abutting her aperture in consequence of a goldfish, repeatedly, afterwards fail, but every distinct time, no complete could alike leave her mouth, like her articulation was declining her. Finally, she managed to acquisition her voice, but, how? She accursed off rapidly, her affection admiring for answers, because. Naruto aback sighed, Lord, this is hard. Naruto, please, acquaint me, what happened? Emily began, her articulation rather squeaky, was it Adam? Was it Loot, or dash? Emily, demography a abysmal breath, Naruto sniffled already more, afore demography a shuddering breath, his articulation arise slightly, yes, it had to do with Adam, but, it additionally had to do, with Sarah herself. She'll accord Sarah a acceptable allotment of her apperception, kindly, or conceivably aggressively kindly. She may be the youngest, but she was still a seraphim, and she was still admired amidst others, and able oral her own right. No, Naruto batten out, you don't charge to do that for me. He sighed already more, listen, I'm fine, sure, it's a massive adeptness shock bottom ward here, but, I'm still alive, that's the important thing. Naruto. Emily murmured sadly, a claim abrading her bottom forth the tiled ground. Emily, please, affiance me one thing, Naruto said, his articulation somewhat firm, but still riddled with emotion. Why yes, anything. Don't fall to appear afterwards me, Naruto batten out, you accept the adequacy of abundance in you, I aloof apperceive it. You just, accept to appropriate the befalling aback it arrives, alike if things in heaven aren't as all they seem, She began, her eyes disturbing up, Please, Emily, Naruto pleaded, please affiance me that you won't fall, and amuse-affiance me you'll attending afterwards Kini and the others. I promise, Naruto, Emily murmured, sniffling hardly as she wiped some tears out of the corners of her eyes. Thank you. I wouldn't be able to animate with myself animate that you or Kini falling would be my fault, abundant abeyance abounding the band already more, afore Naruto murmured out, I'm so sorry. Emily sniffed, it's alright, Naruto, she managed to asphyxiate out, affecting smile on her face, I absolve you, and I'm abiding Kini will too. Naruto couldn't advise but accord a bendable chuckle, thank you, that agency the apple to me, she heard Naruto blow already more, I'll try to accumulate in touch, but I'm not abiding how that will go bottom ward here. You're strong, Naruto, Emily batten out, a small, aerial cackle artifice her throat to go with addition sniffle, stronger than best I know. That may be the case, but I don't appetite to booty any chances, not afterwards accepting able adeptness of the beings of hell. There was a abeyance already afresh afore Naruto accurate article that acquired Emily to shudder, goodbye, Emily, may we see anniversary added again, and not aloof in our memories and dreams. Just like that, the band went asleep as Naruto afraid up the phone. Goodbye, Emily aside through sniffles, auditioned the affable dings and beeping of her phone. Emily took a shuddering breath, as she tried, and bootless to accumulate her affections in check. Dropping the buzz bottom ward to the attic with an alveolate clatter, Emily fell to the attic in abundance and cried. She cried and cried, yet her afflicted wails of affliction were never able to escape the bankrupt aperture and windows of Naruto's apartment. Bringing the buzz abroad from his ear, Naruto couldn't advise but let apart a few tears from his eyes, looking at the angel of Emily's blithesome announcement as the little angel of her acquaintance page, demography a abysmal shuddering breath, he bankrupt the acquaintance screen. A sniffling already added as he took afterimage of his screensaver, which was that of him. Emily and Kini artlessly adequate themselves on a bank in heaven, watching the admirable aurora in the distance. Man, he knew that falling would affect him, but, audition how crestfallen and agitated Emily was, it fabricated his affection clench. And he didn't cartel anticipate what Kini anticipation either, he knew for abiding that Kini adeptness booty it alike worse than Emily did, afterwards all, he did advise Kini how to action and avert herself should the charge any time arise. He regretted falling, a lot, but, he aloof couldn't be associated with them, not with the exterminations happening, that went a join aggregate that heaven for. Shaking his arch from those thoughts, Naruto pocketed his buzz afore annoyed bottom ward assimilate the ground, bringing his knees up to his chest afore agreement his arch on them. He aloof hoped and prayed that Emily would heed his word, and not fall like he would, she still had so abundant to action heaven itself, it aloof bare to appearance itself, abundant like how his abeyant did aback he was animate many, abounding moons ago. He didn't apperceive how continued he was like this, the actuality that he could apprehend added sinners and conceivably hellborn demons walking by him afterwards a affliction in the world, not alike aggravation to analysis upon him caked his bareness and affliction at the accepted point in time. Suddenly, however, he heard the complete of aerial heels cautiously bore forth the pavement at a rather sedate pace, afore a baby adumbration overcame him as addition stood afore him. Well, don't you attending like shit? Snapping his arch upwards, Naruto glared at whoever dared arrest his moment of mourning, aching for the bonds that best acceptable fractured, conceivably above bald simple repairing. However, he blinked in abruptness as he saw the semi-familiar pigtails of Desire Red and Ephotic Fleet Blue. Oh, it's you again, Naruto said, not absolutely adjoined seeing her again. At Atomic she was a semi-familiar amount in this cast new place. Sorry, I didn't get your name beforehand. Being on a name-to-name base would at Atomic be a little bigger than actuality strangers. Although, He was a little put off by the arduous action dancing in her eyes, and the absent smile aloft her face as she admired him. "Well, I artlessly didn't accord it because I didn't apprehend to see you again," she said, her articulation accepting in basal emphasis that he couldn't pinpoint. "Name's Velvet," she alien herself, afore adopting a rather aerial countenance appear his direction. "What 'bout you?" "Well, charmed to accommodated you, Velvet," Naruto said, boring continuing up to his abounding height. "Name's Naruto, but don't abrasion it out." Velvet artlessly snorted at his introduction. "You accord that crack out all the time?" she asked, a rather ample fanged beam on her face. "It's meant to be an icebreaker," Naruto answered back, a baby artful beam on his face, his contrarily black affection artlessly vanishing like a sunset. "And it worked, didn't it?" "I assumption it did," she said with a baby shrug, afore agreement, a duke on her hip and bulging it out slightly. "So, what got you bottom-ward in the shitter?" Momentarily bent off guard by the chat choice, Naruto befuddled his head. He bared to get acclimated to that little actuality now, afore answering her question. "Just some problems with a friend," he admitted, of advance acceptance the abounding truth. Velvet artlessly hummed, one aerial countenance raising. Of course, she could acquaint that he was ambuscade something. His facial appearance were aloof too accessible to apprehend for addition like her, but she'll acquiesce it, for now. "So," Naruto began awkwardly, aggravating to change the band of topic, "what brings you out here?" Man, he sucked at this. Conceivably blockage in heaven for so continued absolutely broke his adeptness to alpha and abide conversations. Also, was it aloof him, or were bodies giving this Velvet appearance a rather advanced birth, and giving her somewhat fearful, yet amative looks? Interesting. "I was artlessly on an assignment for a colleague, which is now done and dusted," she said, afore demography her buzz out and bound scrolling through amusing media. "Blank him for appropriate now." "Oh," Naruto muttered, abrading the aback of his neck, an awkward cackle abrogation his lips. "So, what do you guys do for fun about here?" he asked, absolutely analytical and badly attempting to at atomic acquiesce the chat to abide afterwards at actuality so awkward. Velvet's eyes gleamed and she pocketed her. "Well, fun is altered for anybody of course," she said, causing Naruto to artlessly cycle his eyes. "But me personally, I like to go arcade for outfits. Aback I'm not browsing through the socials, of course." The smile on her face widened to a breast astonishing proportions, afore eyeing Naruto carefully, or added precisely, his clothing, and it acquired him to shiver slightly. "How about we get you some new fits?" she offered, but from her accent of voice, it was affiliated to a simple command. Think of it as a allowance for actuality so interesting. Really? Aloof like that? Naruto questioned, absolutely abashed that she would do such a affair for him, a breast complete stranger. "Well, in acknowledgement for article in the future, which I'm still yet to anticipate of." Oh, so that was the absolute acumen abaft this. He had heard rumors of the absolute deal with the devil kinda thing. Well, deals with a demon, in this case. Still, he could comedy forth with this. Hopefully, she didn't ask for article absolutely outrageous. "I guess," he said, a pleasant, beholden smile on his face at the offer, although he was artlessly arena forth with the absolute thing. It adeptness be a bit awe-inspiring should he abjure this action absolutely aback for no reason. He burst as the beam on Velvet's face grew sickeningly large, and her eyes seemed to accretion and base beam afore abiding to normal. "Excellent," she cooed out. Reaching out, Velvet effective authority of Naruto's wrist afore bound boring him forth abaft her, all the while her simple bustling was sending slight chills bottomward his spine, and he couldn't advise but ask, what the fuck did he get himself into?